What's going on, diehards? Welcome back to the Total Takedown. That's right, we are talking overs and unders for UFC Vegas 101, and we're going to shake things up just a little bit here on this show. Rather than running through the entire card and talking about every single total, even the absolutely gross and disgusting, over 3.5 women's MMA fights that are chalked at minus 550, etc. I think what we're going to do is from now on, I'm going to narrow it down to my favorite 5 totals for the card. That way I've got a little bit more of an opinion to give you. That way I've got a little bit more stake in the fact that these are the totals on the board that I actually like and I think are bettable and or parlayable. I think that's going to give you a little bit better content rather than rapid firing and saying a lot of words without a whole lot of actual actionable information on those fights where I know less, care less, and have less of an angle. So I think we're going to give this a shot. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the new format going forward, and I think we're going to give it a try, at least for a couple weeks, and see how it sticks, and then we'll kind of take it from there. But the first total that I want to bring to your attention here is going to be Magomed Gadzia-sulov taking on Bruno Lopez. We've got a 2.5 total in most places. As you guys know, I am sponsored by Bet Openly. You're going to get better numbers over there, so make sure you're checking that out, because DraftKings, for example, has this fight at the under 2.5 minus 145. You're getting plus 114 on the over 2.5 at DraftKings. That's gonna be a minus 130 plus 130 type of situation over on a site like Bet Openly, where you're going to have the winner paying 1% juice. The number is better on both sides. There's not going to be this massive gap between the total numbers. So please use the link in the description below, you guys. Make sure you're signing up over at Bet Openly. Make sure you're checking that site out. It's going to save you money long term. And of course, I have a giveaway which is focused on totals on UFC Vegas 101. That's right, $50 prize, free entry. All you've got to do is enter the code DIEHARDMMA and you'll be able to come compete for a $50 prize for free on Bet Openly. So if you're not signed up, if you don't have an account, now's the perfect time to do so. Check it out. Come try to win some of this free cash and then test out the platform here. Back to the card here. First total I'm bringing to your attention, Magomed Gadzia-sulov and Bruno Lopez. A 2.5 total, under minus 140. As we talked about. The reason I like the under look here in this fight is because Bruno Lopez is a guy who's a 2 times Dana White's Contender Series competitor. I do not think much of those fighters. They are not guys who I think are going to have a very long shelf life in the UFC. Lopez has been dropped and hurt many times already throughout the course of his career. We've seen him take shots, and at the lower levels, you'll be able to kind of recover from some of those punches and get your wits back about you, get up, get back into the fight. That's not something you can do at the UFC level, and especially as you start to step up in difficulty, you're not going to have the opportunity to have that recovery. You're not going to be able to pull that type of thing off. These guys are not going to let you off the hook with one big shot and then just kind of let you sit around and recover and feel yourself out, especially someone like Magomed Gadzia-sulov. If he hurts Lopez, he is not going to let this guy recover. He's not going to give him a second. He's not going to let him off the hook. He'll jump on top of him. He'll sink a choke in. He'll go to work with ground and pound. I think Magomed Gadzia-sulov is a little underrated striking. He is a wet blanket grappling. That's the only concern for me with this fight not going under. But even if he does get on top of Lopez grappling, I actually think the submission is going to be live, because I don't think much of Bruno Lopez's gas. The way this guy fights, he moves backwards so much. Gadzia-sulov is going to be able to dictate the range and the pace, and it's just going to come down to kind of what he wants to do. Now, on the flip side of this, I've talked about how Magomed Gadzia-sulov, for all the positive that I just spun for him, I don't think he's that high of an operator either at the UFC level. I think he's better than Bruno Lopez is, but I don't know that he's a guy that's long for this organization either. They're trying to make something of him. They're giving him winnable fights, and because of that, we can see the flaws in his game, right? Like, we've seen that he's been able to be hit. We've seen he's been hurt. I'm not entirely sold on his cardio. Bruno Lopez is a guy who we've seen is able to follow a good game plan, stay defensive, stretch his opponents out, and then go to work with his heavy hands deeper into the fight. If he's able to shuck a couple of takedowns from Gadzia-sulov, if he is able to survive the striking early of Gadzia-sulov, and you get Magomed, who suddenly is in new territory, can't get this guy down to the ground, he's starting to get tired, maybe he's a little banged up, someone like Bruno Lopez is going to put it on him at that stage of the game. Both these guys can be finished. Both these guys can finish. I like an under 2.5 here for the first total at UFC Vegas 101. The second total I want to highlight here is Marcos Tulio Silva taking on DIEHARDMMA. Marcos Tulio Silva is a guy that, again, I'm very sketched out about in this spot. I am not as well versed in Marco Tulio as I would like to be. He's a UFC newcomer. The UFC is trying to book these Dana White's Contender Series fighters in winnable spots. But he's getting DIEHARDMMA, somebody who has started to get to the point where maybe we're hating on him just a little bit too much. We've seen Ihor able to go a full 15 minutes at the UFC level with guys like Cesar Almeida, who's also on this card. He's a decent enough kickboxer. At 185 pounds, he's not an undersized guy. You know, at 205, Ihor was getting cracked left and right by some of the monsters of the division. He just wasn't built for 205. Down at 185, it's a bit of a different story. He's kept his hand speed. His grappling is there. He's not great at it, but he can do it. And then he's also got the ability to stick and move and control the range. He's got a height advantage on a lot of these guys. He's got a reach advantage on a lot of these guys. So I'm not arguing for DIEHARDMMA to be able to win this fight necessarily, but what I am arguing for is the fact that he can probably survive a round. You know, you've got this guy coming off Dana White's Contender Series, and are we sure he's UFC level? Does he have just nuclear power? Can he match the type of strength and pop in his punches that Ihor has seen at 205 pounds? I'm not so sure of that. So because of that, I like to take these UFC debutantes, these younger fighters that are getting their first step up in competition, that big first step up in class. It tends to be something that they struggle with. They got to figure it out. Now, the UFC is trying to serve this guy a highlight reel KO on a platter, but I'm just not convinced that Ihor is going to be there to be the guy that gets plastered like that. Even if he does, I'm not sure it happens right away on the first couple of punches. So I think this fight goes a little bit longer. The over 1.5 here is minus 145. I like the over 1.5s, especially what we've been seeing lately from the UFC. I know there's talk about, you know, is it the gloves? Is it the, you know, the drug testing? Is it the new PEDs that everybody's on getting away with, etc.? We don't really know. I know I made an argument for it being the gloves a whole lot, and that was half jokingly, but I think we're getting the old UFC gloves, which hopefully will convert to more violence. But in this kind of a matchup, I think Ihor knows what's going on. He's going to look to stick and move and try and stay safe out there, try not to get into a chin fight with this guy. And if that's the case, I do think we get into the later rounds, so I'm going to say over 1.5 for this one. Next up, my boy C-Rod Christian Rodriguez taking on Austin Bashy. Now, you guys know I love me some C-Rod. You guys know I've already got me a bet locked in on Christian Rodriguez. He's my boy, the O-Taker himself. And this is a fight that I think we can look at the total, even though it's a little bit pricey. 2.5, over is minus 250. Under 2.5, you're getting about plus 190. Again, gross splits. Please go check out Bet Openly for better prices. This is exactly the same situation as the last fight. Austin Bashy is legit, okay? This kid's the real deal. I've talked about him for a long time. We've seen him coming. We knew he was going to make it to the UFC, and we knew he was going to be a force once he got here. However, he does leave things questionable. You know, you look at his last fight. He got a second-round submission, and what am I going to do to poke a hole in that, right? Well, he kind of chain grappled his way to get there and wore his opponent out. You're not wearing out C-Rod by chain grappling. In the second round, when Austin Bashy was stuck on the feet, he did not really have anything to offer as far as striking. He's really thick, he's really muscly, he's pumped up with adrenaline, his blood is pumping through his veins, his arms looked heavy, he swung a big overhand, but it was not the striking that was putting any fear in his opponent. He cracked that guy with everything he had. I don't know that Austin Bashy has knockout power at the UFC level. I'm just not convinced that he's got that. I think he's a slick grappler, I think he's a very explosive and strong, good wrestler, and he's got decent looking cardio at this point, but he's never fought anybody at this level. He's never fought anybody who's going to be able to stuff those takedowns and make him continue to work for it. He's been able to break everybody with his pace and pressure up until this point. Christian Rodriguez is the ultimate test for that style of fighting. In fact, that's literally everybody the UFC's ever given this kid. I don't know who he pissed off, but I hope they figure out that C-Rod's legit after this fight. At any rate, Austin Bashy being able to take down Christian Rodriguez, I can see it, no problem. Austin Bashy being able to climb Christian Rodriguez like a freaking tree and then sink in a rear naked choke the way he had to in his Dana White's Contender Series fight, yeah, not quite as much. I don't see that taking place. Christian Rodriguez, even though he's coming off of a submission loss, is very difficult to tap out. You know, all the fights that he's had full preparation for so far in the UFC, he has not been able to be caught by these very prolific grapplers and solid submission specialists. He made a mistake in his last fight, taking down a much savvier, much more veteran, much larger opponent and leaving his neck out there just a little bit too long in that takedown attempt. That's a lesson learned for a young fighter, right? Bashy's not going to be pulling guillotines on Christian Rodriguez. He's going to be looking to get on top. He's going to look to wrestle. He'll look to take the back for a rear naked choke. Christian Rodriguez knows how to get up. Yes, he exposes his back from time to time, but we've never seen him rear naked choke from that before. This guy knows what he's doing as far as his defense goes. So I believe Christian Rodriguez is going to stay safe. The only question I have for this over 2.5 hitting is going to be Austin Bashy when we get into the second and the third rounds. If this kid runs into a brick wall for 10 straight minutes, does he gas out in the third and collapse? We have seen that's Christian Rodriguez's MO, is that he takes people out in round 3 once they are tired, and that's always on the table. That's definitely on the table in a spot like this, where we've got a very young UFC debutant taking on somebody with UFC caliber experience. So the over 2.5 at -250, it's a little bit scary just because of the first couple minutes of that third round. I could see Christian Rodriguez getting a TKO or a submission victory. The reason I kind of like it here in this spot, though, is I still think Christian Rodriguez is in the wrong weight class. I think he belongs a weight class below this one. That's very, very naturally where he fits. He had a tough time cutting weight. That's why he's fighting up here now, and he's getting all these hard fights, is because he missed weight that one time, or 2 times, or 3 times, whatever it was. But at the end of the day, because he's fighting up this weight class, I'm not sure he's got the potent finishing ability that he otherwise would have. So I think even if Christian Rodriguez does win this fight, it's probably going to be a decision where he does enough to win rounds 2 and 3, but he's not quite able to get Bashy out of there. Unless Bashy just falls off a freaking cliff with his gas, something we've never seen before, I think it'll be a decision. I like this over 2.5. It's -250. To me, it feels like it's parlayable. Again, there are threats. Anytime you're laying this kind of a price tag on an over, it's like parlaying up a favorite, right? We're fighting. Someone could slip on a banana peel. Someone could get their neck caught in a choke. This over 2.5 makes sense to me, and I like it. We're going to go to the co-main event for our 4th highlighted total here on this card. Santiago Ponzanibbio taking on Carlston Harris. We've got another 2.5 here. The over 2.5 being +120. The under 2.5 -155. And I like violence again, you guys. I really do here. Both these guys are getting old, but both these guys are essentially glass cannons at this point, and that's kind of all this comes down to, right? Ponzanibbio, he's gone to a bunch of split decisions lately, but we've seen him hurt way more often than normal in his last couple fights, and he has been finished in one of those fights. Carlston Harris, all of his losses lately, they've been finishes, and he's coming off a brutal KO loss in his last fight. Carlston Harris, even though he's not the slicker of these two strikers, he's a little sloppy. He's got those anthropomorphic advantages where he's long, he's lanky, he'll catch you at weird, odd angles. And Santiago Ponzanibbio, he's going to be the much savvier striker when they get in close, when they get in tight. Santiago's going to have the advantage. He'll have the speed advantage, and he'll just have the accuracy advantage. Both these guys are gonna land on each other. You also can't forget the nuclear option, which is Carlston Harris' submission game. If he gets this fight to the ground, even if it's in a scramble, if he catches some kind of a choke, those long-ass lanky arms, he'll be able to sink in a submission. So I think both these guys are on their way out. Both of them are very fragile at this stage of the game. We could get an old man fight that goes 15 minutes, but I'm more willing to bet one of these guys has got a little bit more gas in the tank than the other does, and we end up seeing some kind of a finish. So we'll say under 2.5, Ponzanibbio versus Harris. And the final fight that I want to highlight here for the total takedown this week is Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Heos. I can't tell you guys how much I just keep hearing the over is the play, the over is the play, this fight's going the distance, we're getting a discount, it's going the distance. How many times do we see women's MMA fights where the over 2.5 is chalked all the way up to like -450? This is a 5-round main event fight. We've got an over 4.5 at -225, -230. That's suspect to me, because at a 3.5, that price should be so much higher. And for a women's MMA fight, you would expect even a 5-round fight to be priced higher for it to go the full 15 minutes. They are fully aware of how dangerous these two women are. Both of them are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, and as much as you want to say they've got great submission defense, just because you're a high-level black belt doesn't mean you can't be caught by another high-level grappler. So submissions are absolutely on the table for both of these women. Both of them are fragile. Now, Mackenzie Dern, I wouldn't like to say as much that she is fragile, but you've watched her last couple of fights. Guys, she's not taking punches the same way anymore. You know, when Amanda Lemos caught her after she got KO'd by Jessica Andrade, Lemos catches her, she falls to the floor, she covers up, she grabs her face. Now, to her credit, she's got the guts to try to roll and move and keep the referee away from her, but Frankly, I thought she was just going to curl up into a ball at that point and take the TKO loss. The fight ends up going the distance. I think that's more because of the way her opponent fought than the way that she fought. She was essentially in survival mode from that point onward. She does not like getting hit anymore. This speed run thing that she's been doing with her career the last couple of years, taking obscene amounts of damage, it wears on you. It just eventually it piles up, and the shot that you used to be able to take without thinking about it, you can't take anymore. And it's very apparent that Mackenzie Dern does not like getting hit. The same way she used to just be able to eat punches and walk forward to get a body lock takedown and drag the fight to the mat, she ain't got that no more. Now, I've talked about Amanda Heos and how fragile she is, okay? She is not at all a fighter that you want to count on for durability. For this weight class, you should be able to take a sledgehammer to the face because these other women just frankly don't hit that hard, and she's rocked in every single fight. She gets dropped regularly. You see her eyes kind of glaze over and roll a little bit when she gets clocked well on the button, and this is against fighters who don't necessarily have the most power. Both these women can strike. Mackenzie Dern has God-given natural power. It probably comes from the junk in that trunk and those killer thick thighs that she's got going on. So even though she's going to be shorter and stockier, if she gets into boxing range, she's a different animal from the last time these two women fought. I know I said that she hadn't made all that many improvements, but my guest on the show on Monday kind of corrected me on that, and I've got to stand by the fact that he was correct. She has improved from the last time these two women met, and I think she's got more power in her punches. Now, Mackenzie Dern, if she gets stuck on the end of the punches from Amanda Heos, that last fight was a 15-minute fight, and there were several times where she was kind of diving on legs for her life. This is a 25-minute fight. If she's getting picked apart and beaten up by Heos at range like that, I don't think she's going to be able to do that for a full 25 minutes. I think eventually there will be a mercy stoppage. I think eventually she'll end up in a spot where the referee is going, yeah, we can't let her keep taking these. Like, if she gets dropped 2-3 times and you see her trying to scramble and dive on ankles and Amanda Heos just welcomes her back up to the feet and starts popping her again, I think they're going to step in and save her, you guys. There's a lot of ways that this fight cannot go the distance in a women's main event fight. Both these women are extremely dangerous. Both these women are extremely fragile. That sets up for an under for me, and I know everybody and their mom is piling in on this over, expecting it to go the full distance. I think we're getting a beautiful number to bet on some violence in the main event, and we're going to surprise some people with some plus money. Under 4.5 right now is sitting at plus 180. There's no rush because everybody's piling in on that over. I'm just going to sit tight for the moment, but I'm probably going to end up adding a violence bet to my card, and I like that under 4.5. That's the new and improved Total Takedown. Do me a favor, hit the like button. Please share the show out. And, of course, leave your comments. If there is another total that I didn't discuss that you have a question about, go ahead and leave that in the chat below. I'll be happy to talk to you guys about it. We'll see you tomorrow for the Undefeated Post-Weigh-In Show. Let's roll.